How big is that island?
On average has about 10,000.
Wow. 5 to 10,000 people.
Yeah.
Wow.
I gotta ask though, what's the thinking around the spoon?
The spoon?
Yeah, you could just squeeze everything out. So what's the point of a spoon?
What I do is I don't watch movies. So then when I get on the plane, I just have like 3 to 4 movies that I can watch, and then I sleep, wake up, and I am hopefully in the country where I'm at.
So this is sort of where my story diverged from what it would be going into the Army and what it ended up being leaving.
Are you happy? Welcome to the In the Field podcast, where we speak to veterans, service members, and those in the transition process to learn about their stories. Ian, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Holden.
How have you been? It's been a hot second since we last chatted.
Good, busy. I mean, not as busy as you, but clearly very busy trying to get stuff done.
You're our first guest from a foreign military.
I'm honored.
So I typically ask, when was the last time you had an MRE? I feel like most services have, foreign or what have you, have some form of MRE. Am I incorrect on that assumption? And can you tell me a little bit of Singaporean Army, correct?
Yes, that's right. We also have MREs. We have them slightly different flavored, nothing Mexican. I kind of peeked around, see what's on the menu. But yeah, definitely have that. We have our own good MREs. We got our really crappy ones that we try to trade away, but you know, it's all
Do they call them MREs, or what's the...
Yeah, MREs. We also have really colloquial names for them, like dog biscuits, things of that sort. So I'm sure we'll get into it in this podcast.
When was the last time? So you served 2 years. When did you get out?
Well, I got out over a decade ago.
Okay.
So I think the last time I had an MRE was probably thereabouts, like a decade ago.
Do you remember what it was?
I think it was a spaghetti dish, like a tomato-based spaghetti dish, because it definitely was one of the most hot favorite. You definitely want to trade for those as much as you can.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty certain that would be the last one I've ever had.
That's a fantastic memory, because even though I ask that question sometimes, if you were to ask me it, I would be like, I think they start to blend in a little too much. Like at a certain point, it's like it was cold. I was pretty hungry. I ate it. But let's jump into it. So we've got a few on the floor here.
Sure, let's do it.
We've got chicken burrito bowl, cheese tortellini. We've got Mexican style rice and bean bowl. Any in particular that strike your fancy?
I mean, I want to try the Mexican bowl, but I had Chipotle this afternoon, so maybe...
Could be a good comparison. But
you know what? Yeah, let's do it.
Or there's also the chicken burrito or the cheese. The cheese tortellini is pretty good.
I'll do the cheese tortellini. Okay. Yeah, let's do the tomato comparison.
Exactly. There you go, sir.
Cheers. Thanks, Chief.
Now, you know what? I'll do the Mexican style rice and bean bowl. Just as an alternative here. So
we can trade it up. We can chop it up.
We can chop it up. Exactly. Nothing like some trades here. So as we get to opening these things up, and I got a knife here just, man, no issues whatsoever.
Fingers. Let's go.
What was it like growing up? So was the Singaporean military compulsory service? And I would love to know, just given that the American military is 100% volunteer, like how do people growing up in Singapore frame the military and the 2 years that they might have to do? Got it.
Yeah. So yes, you're right. It is compulsory. Conscription is the official term for it. Most men, once they get to the age of 18, would have to go into the military, either the enlisted route, either through basic military training, but basically everybody has to do it. There's no if or ands or buts.
Yeah.
If you're 18, you get marched off, you do 2 years, and then you go back into society.
Is it something that you're like looking forward to? Is it something that is kind of just instilled in the sense of, something that you should be doing?
Right.
Like, and maybe it's a gradient, right? Some people were like, I really don't want to do this.
Right. I'll tell you from my experience, and obviously some of the experiences that I've had hearing from my friends, they've made movies about this whole journey, right? In Singapore, they're like serial movies about it.
Yeah.
my dad did it. I did it. When I have a kid, a son, he's very likely going to do it. So it's definitely how we call it, like a rite of passage.
Yeah.
Right. Everybody goes through it. Personally, for me, I went into basic military training a day after I turned 18.
Wow.
So
great birthday. Were you a little hungover, or?
I was officially hungover just because, our drinking age in Singapore is 18. You just want to get it out of your system. So for me, it was a good bookend to be like, hey, you're officially a man.
Yeah.
Now do this thing for 2 years, just like your dad did. So
did you have an option as to what you could do while in, or do they just tell you, hey, Ian, great, you're doing this?
So I that's a very good question. There are, and I think there's something similar in the American Army too, is that there's a sort of medical grading of, how fit you are, how able-bodied you are.
Yep.
So this is, and I'll tell you a funny story here, Holden. Growing up, I had friends that are, athletes. They play sports, they were swimmers, they play rugby. And most of them had a different perspective going to national service, as we call it. They were like, I just want to lay low.
Yeah.
I've, hurt my arm here. I hurt my back. Medically downgrade me.
Right.
So that I get 2 years of desk job.
Got it.
And I think to your question, it's like you could totally make out what you want of it. I personally just wanted to go in there. I know it's 2 years that, quite honestly, will be unlike anything else.
Yeah.
I just want to see it for everything that it is.
Two thoughts that I have. One is, and I'm shooting in the dark here, is I wonder if some of those athletes are like, because the military, you might get hurt in training, I want to try to protect my body so that I can continue being an athlete afterwards. Again, no idea. But then the second piece that you said, I remember, I've talked to my dad. He had to do his service in the Swedish Army, and he had said he was in the tank division. So I actually have one of his name tags, which is pretty
That's
cool.
awesome, dude.
And I've asked him about his time, and he goes, it's not the American Army, da da da. He goes, but I did get to drive a lot of tanks and crush a bunch of vehicles like in training rig exercises. I'm like, there's something about that, right? I mean, again, I don't want to get into, I mean, maybe we will get into the idea of like, is a compulsory service or a conscription beneficial to a society? But there's got to be something there of like, when else are you going to be able to drive a tank and with a whole bunch of people and do these kind of things that you would never do in the civilian world? And I think it did positively impact him. I mean, he obviously didn't stay in. He went on to do other things, but the fact that he had that life experience has to mean something.
Yeah. So for your first question, honestly, I don't think that was their main motivation.
So I'm off.
Desk job comes in the Army. It's still mostly 8 to 5.
Yeah.
They get to go home.
Got it.
They get to go out, have a good meal.
Yeah.
Sleep in their own beds. Maybe occasionally go out and party.
Yeah.
If you're actually in like the full service, you're staying in the barracks, sometimes training sites, off cam, multiple days, even weeks on end. So the expectation is that you're not going to get something that is very comfortable.
Yeah.
Versus if you do a desk job, it's going to be comfortable.
Got it. Yeah. So then, you said you were looking forward to it. How did the grading system work for you? Were you given a couple options, or just based on how you test, they said this?
So I think that's a fantastic question, right? So prior to you getting enlisted into basic military training, they have everybody come in, they do medical tests, blood work, heart rate, EKG, the entire, boondoggle there. Then they'll ask you to basically self-admit if you have any injuries, produce the medical reports, and then they kind of tweak the grading system, the medical skill system for you. So that's kind of how it works. There's also aptitude tests, cognitive tests that you have to pass. But otherwise, I haven't really seen people sort of have any troubles on that front too.
Got it. Did you have an idea of what you wanted to do? You had mentioned, well, I guess everyone's dad must have served, right? I mean, at least in theory, right? Were you kind of going in and going like, I want to do what he did, or did you have a stack rank of jobs that you were interested in fulfilling?
Right. Yeah, that's a great question. So a little bit about myself is I am really lazy when I was growing up. In school, I did really well, and I just got progressively lazier and lazier. And as such, I thought that being in the military would be helpful, and more specifically, being a pilot.
Okay.
I wanted to do fixed wing.
Yep.
I wanted to fly. At that point, I think we had the F-14s or the F-22s, and I figured, hey, that's a great job. You do that 16 years, 18 years, and then you got a commercial pilot career on the back end of that. That seems pretty dope. Yeah. So if you want to ask me what's top of the rank, I definitely try to be a pilot.
Yeah.
And then quickly realized that there were just a lot more expectations, a lot of things that
a lot of tests.
Yes, that's right. And also, when we'll kind of get into it, kind of what ambition is and what the military is in terms of like servicing those ambitions. Yeah.
So pilot, top of the list, realizing maybe a little tough. By the way, so you're growing up in the capital of Singapore, which is also Singapore. The capital of Singapore is Singapore. Capital Singapore is
think Vatican, right? It's a tiny city, which is also a tiny state, which is also a tiny country. I think, don't quote me on that, we're probably about 30 miles long and then 20 miles tall.
So everyone lives in the city.
Yeah, everybody lives in the city, which we can also get into, right? Where do you actually train? Where do you put those boys in there to train? Where do you fly the planes? Things of that sort. So. But we can get into that.
Yeah. So what job did you end up getting?
So at 18, you go into basic military training. You do 3 months there. We actually have a little island that's in the offshoot of the main island, and they shuttle every boy over there.
Is it called Little Singapore?
No, it's called Pulau Tekong.
Okay.
Yeah. And let me just kind of like remember it. So you take a ferry. Your parents are there on the first day.
Got it.
They want to make sure you're okay, you're all settled in. And by the afternoon after lunch, they sort of whisk them off the island. And that's kind of when it actually like clicks for you, right? It's like, hey, this is real now. When it gets really real is when they march everybody into the main hall. There were 6 barbers.
Oh.
You paid $2.
You have to pay for it.
Exactly.
Did we have to pay for it? Somebody leave a comment on whether or not you have to pay in the U.S. Army for your haircut. I vaguely remember you do. It's like you get I think they call it like the Freedom Eagle card or whatever.
Okay.
I don't remember how much it cost. So you paid $2 for
It was $2.
Was it the best haircut you ever had in your life?
No.
It was a haircut you had in your life.
Yeah, it was a haircut that I had. And I think that was the first point where it really hit home.
Yeah. When
you see all the bald heads, everybody's looking slightly confused of what the heck is going on.
Yeah.
That's when it kind of hit home for you. So.
And it's funny because I usually ask my guest, again, because it's a volunteer force. You know, when we talk about basic training, I go, was there at any point you went, oh, what did I get myself into? But I guess the framing in your mind might be a little bit different when it is, you know, a conscription or national service. So, I mean, maybe you are like, what did I get myself into? But at the end of the day, it's like, well, I had to do this, right?
Yeah.
How was that time, and how do you kind of learn from that, or how do you kind of figure yourself out in something that needs to be done?
I think the human adapts pretty quickly, right? The first day, the first 3 days, the first week, you sort of have like this shock to your body, right? So first things first is you no longer have control of your sleep time. Lights out at 10, reverie at 5. Conceptually, it's again, the same format across every single army, every single military, but that kind of like hits you. You wake up at 5, you do PT, you get breakfast. Then all of a sudden you realize you no longer have any semblance of control of your own schedule. Like that's, I think, the first thing. But I think credit to like the human race is like we adapt pretty quickly. We soon realize, especially for us where like there's no option there, you soon to realize and quickly understand like, okay, this is what I got to do. For me personally, I adopt the mentality like if I'm already in there, right?
Yeah.
There's no escape valve. You might as well do the most out of it, enjoy the best out of it, and then have a great story to tell once you're out of it.
What do you think people struggled with the most in the Singaporean military? Was it, because again, like I guess I'm just really fascinated with, I struggled, I think in basic training because I was wholly unprepared. And I think I had a false expectation of what the military was. And eventually I got to the point where I realized how to deal with the military, how to be an adult, how to be a soldier. But again, because I signed up for it, I think there was that thing of like, why did I even think to do this? So I don't even know what the question is, but I guess the people who were struggling, what were they doing that maybe caused that? And then for people who were doing well, was it just purely a mentality shift or a mentality of how to handle it?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Again, it speaks to about your own experience and what my experience kind of overlays on top of you. I guess when I saw people struggle, it was just the unwillingness to accept that this is the reality that they're in. Mm-hmm. There's sort of a delusion like, hey, if I can cheat my brain a little bit more, I can sort of imagine I'm not doing this very thing. Yeah. When you should just embrace it. Just, you know, embrace the suck. Just jump straight into it.
I was going to say, that's I don't know if they have the same phrase. I feel like all the militaries have the same. Embrace the suck, just deal with it.
Exactly. And for me too, and this is something, remember that little island that we went on basic military training? It actually stands in the path of our airport. Mm-hmm. So every time I'll see a plane that flies over and I was just like, hey, just suck it up, enjoy the experience as much as you can. And you know that like at some point you'll be off this island.
Yeah.
Watching those planes kind of fly over every day just kind of gave me a little bit more like, hey, you're not in this crazy situation. Everybody's done it before.
How big is that island?
Man, it was big enough to do a whole bunch of stuff. So basic military training intake, I think on average has about 10,000.
Wow. 5 to 10,000 people.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
So that island is big enough to do a 24-click march, that's for sure. There was a firing range there. There were barracks. There were just a whole bunch of different things you could do, like field training and stuff. So by no means small. I mean, again, compared to everything in the US, everything is small.
I mean, when you're the entire size of Europe plus some, it's a bit of a false comparison. It's hard to compare.
Right.
How long is basic training?
So basic training was give or take about 3 months, 90 days. Okay. You go through kind of the basic stuff, learn to take care of your weapon, discipline, live a disciplined, regimented life, understand basic maneuvers, camouflage, what else? Field positions, weapons handling, just kind of the basic stuff to not get yourself killed, right? That's why it's called basic military training. Yeah. Then across, I think, 90 days or so, you're actually graded on your physical, your aptitude, your attitude, a lot of different vectors there. Mm-hmm. Then as part of like the passing out parade, what happens is they start to slot people into like what the remainder of the year would be.
Got it.
So in general, there are about 3 paths that you could take. OCS, officer, CISPEC, which is kind of specialist. So your sergeants, your staff sergeants.
Got it.
And then into like the enlisted men.
Okay.
So that was kind of the route. After my 90 days, I got posted to OCS, and then I spent another, call it 9 months or so training, learning about like, field combat, leadership, all that stuff.
Got it. So it's a full year of training.
Yeah.
Man, same island the entire year, or where do you go after the 90 days?
Right. So the 90 days, they brought us to the other side of the island.
Okay. Same island though.
No, it's a different.
It's
another island.
And that one's called Little Singapore.
No, just called Singapore.
Okay.
Yeah. they had that. You do another 3 months of, call it basic officer training. And then the last 6 months is specific dedicated training. So
Got it.
This is where you talk about the armor division, the artillery, the EOD, logistics, infantry. That's the kind of slotting that happens in the last 6 months or so.
Got it. And which one did you get into?
So I got posted to logistics. I was in the S4 branch. That I thought was one of the best experiences I could have, just because of how applicable a lot of things that we learned there.
Yeah.
So
they're pretty good.
Sure.
This is the first time I've had it. Yeah, there you go. I think it was the first time I've had it. It was cranberry. Here's the problem with this podcast.
Don't worry, I'll cover up the blank space, right? So, I mean, Holden, this, I think what you mentioned, and I think what we've kind of drawn upon is military in Singapore, in the US, and Sweden, it's primarily the same script, but with the different casts and a different movie set. But the terminologies are all the same. I guarantee you the stories that I have, the most messed up, the most screwed up ones are also going to be very applicable. You'll be like, I got that. I have the exact same story, but like with a completely different set of casts.
I have noticed that there is a common language that people who have served in the military kind of share, regardless of which military they were a part of. And again, I think it ties to that shared experience. And I've gone back and forth on my mentality of conscription or mandatory service. And it always tends to flare up in the United States every few years of there's not enough, community and all that other stuff. And to some extent, I do agree that, again, it's like that shared,
What's your take on it? Like, I'll love to hear it.
Yeah, I think the military provides a lot of good. And there's a lot of bad to it too, right? But I do think that there's a shared language and experience. And when you do that, you do bond people, you can have shared common experiences. And it's probably very similar in the Singaporean military, but like you have people from like all walks of life join. And you really do. I mean, I met people I'm from suburbia, Massachusetts, born in Sweden, and I'd be in a platoon with somebody who grew up in Alabama, and I could barely understand him. And he's talking about how his grandpappy made moonshine, and like every other word I could understand. And I think there's something good about that. I do think sometimes it's like, but when you force people or, right, there's going to be people who don't want to be there or not want to serve. And then you kind of bring down everybody else with you. Because like I've been in platoons where you had a guy who was like, I don't want to be here, like blah, blah, blah. And it's just like,
I get it.
It brings down morale. So then how do you balance that with everything else?
Yeah, I get that. It's funny because my co-founders and I were just talking about this, like the civicness of, national service, right? However you want to brand it. But some amount of bought-in that a citizenry can have to a nation is through public service.
And to be fair, like usually when this conversation comes up too, it's not always within the context of the military. You could become...
That's right.
A public school teacher. You could be a medic.
Coast Guard.
Coast Guard. Yeah. Like there are so many avenues. I go back and forth because sometimes the like, I don't know, like pure-blooded American in me goes like, yeah, freedom. Like, dude, don't tell me what to do. Like whatever I want to do, I'm going to do. That's my pure-blooded American. Hopefully it's fine. But then like there's the complete other side, right? Like there's like the freedom of doing whatever you want. But then there is also the like, what is the identity of America and being a citizen and contributing to those around you. And like that is super valuable. And I'm a big supporter of nonprofits and all this other stuff. And it's like, man, if only we had more people who could like buy into that vision and contribute.
Right. So I forgot who said it, but like freedom's not free.
Yeah.
Right. Like you gotta be able to defend it.
Yeah.
The ability to do anything is because nobody can tell you otherwise. Right? Yeah. So that definitely is something that again, I am not a propagandist for Singapore government. Like sure. In hindsight, did I like my experience all 2 years of it? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Some of my fondest stories with some of my best friends are when we are actually FUBAR.
Yeah.
Right in the middle where things are going sideways. You haven't slept in 3 days. You are down on rations. You're tired. You're thirsty. You don't know 2 ways from Sunday.
Yeah.
But those are the stories when we hang out, when we gather together once a year, twice a year. Yeah. Those are the stories we keep going back and back and back again.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you this too. Like what your dad, who shared his experience, I think generationally, men that have gone through service tend to share that common thread that crosses the chasm of generation.
Yeah.
So
I think that is 100% true. And I mean, it is cool. Again, like I think there's that, I feel connected to my dad on another level in the sense of, again, it's just like this weird, like, yeah, you did this, I did this. Like they're very, very different, but very, very similar at the same time. And I think that's incredibly interesting. What was the last year of the service? So you do a full year of all this kind of training, but then you still have another year of, I guess, applying those trainings, or
right.
What does that look like the last year?
So the last year is when you get posted to an actual unit, right? An actual force that is that consists of either regulars, where people that have actually voluntarily signed up, and what we call like national servicemen, people that are conscripted. My last year, I was in the logistics department for the commandos division. For folks who are not familiar, I think they're pretty close to like the Marines, the SEALs type of.
Got it.
It's obviously, like, we are a Commonwealth country. Our structure, our systems, we say lieutenant, not we say lieutenant, not lieutenant.
Okay.
So there's a lot of quixotic, like, British sayings there. But
you mean the wrong way? A lot of wrong ways of saying things.
Let's not get there. But so yeah, we did that for a year. We, again, because we're not in any active wars, we're theoretically blue sky. We do a lot of training sessions. So I've been to Taiwan a few times. To use some of their equipment, their landmass, do cross training. So those are all really fun. And that's kind of the last year of it, which is you actively apply what you learn and be sort of a force for good for the division you're posted to.
I can imagine being in such a small country, how is not everybody just in the Navy? You know what I mean? Like, I mean, when you only have 30 miles, and I don't mean that I don't mean that offensively. I guess I just mean like you mentioned Taiwan and everything else. You obviously have the straits there, and you got a lot of ocean. Are you just always on ships? Are you just kind of flying to different areas and landing there? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, so you got to have enough ships first. So you can't have all of, I think, 300,000 or so regular servicemen in there. But yeah, we do lean on a lot of our allies to do cross training with. Yeah. We've done it with Australia, Thailand, Taiwan, even the United States too. I know we've done some cross trainings with. So the point is, we are fairly land, obviously we're very land constrained, right? It's a very, very small country. What we do is we try to be as efficient as we can. We do a lot of things that are next to each other. We also rely a lot on some of the resources that we have that our partners can lend us. Brunei was one I remember. They have a lot of land and not enough people. So they're like, great, go free to use our mountains, like use our ranges. Like that's the type of resourcing that we have, which is to find partners that have an abundance where we don't. And then we kind of trade our resources there. We trade what we know, what we learn, and then share it with the other military. Got it. Before I do it, do you want to go cold or do you want to heat it? Nah, cold. Definitely you going cold? Listen, there's nothing to prove here. Definitely cold. Okay. I've never had a warm one, so I should not start now. Fair enough. But don't let me keep you. No. I follow the lead of our guests. So, thank you for making me eat a cold dinner. No, I'm kidding. What did you get? Did you get peanut butter or did you get jalapeno? I got... I have no idea what you're talking about. So if you go through, right. So if you go through that, there's usually some goodies. So
We'll walk through it together. So usually there's a drink package.
Yes, probably.
What's that?
This is a peanut spread.
Peanut butter?
Yeah.
Okay. That one's pretty chocolate peanut
spread. Yeah.
Very, you got to, so I'm going to have you try that one. But okay. So what else do we have here?
I've got some roasted peanuts.
Always good.
Always good.
Crackers. Yeah.
Okay. What is this over here? Okay. So it's a electrolyte powder.
Lemon, what flavor? Or does it just say electrolytes?
Lemon lime.
Lemon lime, that's a good one.
I feel like I got a good pack here. So.
Yep. So far, you're winning here. And then just the heating packet and the.
Yeah, I think that's it. Yep.
Okay, cool.
That's it.
I hopefully you can say no, but I would love for you to try the chocolate peanut butter because that is a.
Oh yeah.
That is
100%.
a classic. So let's actually cut open.
Do you want to do?
We're going right into it. So I'm gonna. Sometimes it's easier with scissors to cut these things open.
Holden, can I tell you something?
Yes.
We do kind of have the same structure with the packs, but I remember our ration packs, there's always some commercial goodies in there. So we have chocolates with M&Ms in there.
Usually, if you get really lucky, they're not in every single pack.
Okay.
So the last one I had, it was expired by 2 years, which was very sad.
That's still safe, right?
It should be. It's a peanut butter and M&Ms.
Yeah.
They're probably fine.
I got it.
Yeah. But yes, I will say we did strike out on the on that side. So
so this is not normal.
The chocolate peanut butter,
meaning. So our ration pack usually have like commercial, like M&Ms.
Oh, like always?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Okay.
So we call them Pogey Bait, and it's like one in every, I'm going to make up a number here.
Okay.
It's one in every 6,
okay.
One in every 3.
Okay.
So yeah, they're just not in every single one.
Oh, this is good.
Chocolate peanut butter.
Yeah.
That one's good. One of the few that I really like. And I'm not a fan of the crackers, but you throw a little bit of chocolate peanut butter on there.
Yeah. No, it's good.
Ends up being pretty decent. So I'll...
They're all calorically dense too. So.
Oh, yeah. How many calories... Do you remember roughly how many calories were in the Singaporean MREs?
I want to say like 3,000 minimum.
Okay. Yeah. So like very calorically dense.
Yeah. Our biggest problem is actually not so much the calories, but just the amount of fluid you have to bring. Being a country in equatorial, it's hot. We're talking like 85 with 90% humidity. So it's not so much of how much food you can eat, but how much water you can keep.
I know with a lot of service members who end up training in the US, in like the Philippines or whatever, like that like dense, just like high humidity heat, it can be really, really difficult. Yeah. We had done a training rotation in Louisiana. Yeah. Very, very
probably
humid.
The same. Yeah.
And one of my FOs was wanted to go out in a ghillie suit with one of the snipers and became a heat casualty because he just didn't drink enough water. And then I got yelled at and they're like, why do you let him do that? I'm like, I can't control how much water he drinks. Like
that's what water parades are for, right?
Yeah. So 1 year in, you're enjoying it. I'm guessing you probably had some sort of opportunity or option to re-enlist or extend your contract. Like, did that ever cross your mind, or you kind of knew going in two and out?
Right. Yeah. So it's actually strongly encouraged. So folks that are interested in part of it, I think is very similar to like the GI Bill structure where you serve 4 years, 6 years, depending on what type of, I guess, scholarship you get. You can go to whatever university that you want to, fully paid for by like the Singapore Army.
Wow.
So
is that unique? Because I guess it's unfair. I mean, in Sweden, you already have university paid for, but do you know?
We're talking like international ones.
Okay,
where things get a little bit pricier.
Yeah.
But that was a while ago, so my details might be a little fuzzy. But yeah, definitely, I know some people that took up the offer. I actually think it's a great offer, right? Mm-hmm. You get to do what you like and get your education paid for. I think the Singapore military is all about, making sure that there's a well-thinking, well-equipped, well-able-bodied fighting force. So,
do you think that is in large part because of how small Singapore is, that it's almost born out of necessity?
Yeah.
Of like, there's no option. I mean, it's like when you're that small, it's like we need everybody to be able to chip in here.
Right. So, I mean, let's talk a little bit about it. Like some of the context that your viewers might not know is that we're relatively new in terms of like being on the world stage. Mm-hmm. So, always been for a long time a British colony. World War II happened. The Brits scattered off back to the motherland, and we were under Japanese rule for I think 3 years plus. Mm-hmm. After that, we sort of went back into the colonial rule of the British. And at that point, sort of the rumblings of happening of independence is coming along. Mm-hmm. That happened in 1963. We were merged into Malaysia. Mm-hmm. That marriage wasn't for long. 2 years later, we split out in 1965 to be our own independent country. And that was when the clock was ticking. Like, you got to build your own fighting force. There's nobody else. There's no Brits. There's no Malaysia.
Yeah.
You got to start building your own army.
I'm looking at the clock because I'm debating whether or not to ask this question. And I don't want to put you on the spot here. Given colonial rule, given, I'm assuming 1963, what is the identity of Singapore? I guess like when is like the first time like the nation of Singapore or like the identity of Singapore like starts to like formulate?
It's probably 65. So we're, I think, in our 59th year of independence. It definitely was, there are a lot of different things that the forefathers of the country did, right? Mm-hmm. Kind of what you guys had with America. Yeah. A few good men that stood up and kind of charted the course of history. We also had that for us. But I think identity was really born somewhere around 65, where we sort of rallied around a common theme of like, this is our land, we have to defend it.
Yeah.
Everybody should chip in. We don't know how, but we'll figure out a way along. So I think the actual military happened maybe a couple years later with conscription. But yeah, that was kind of when it officially started for us.
Got it. I have another question. Do you want me to top you up with the beer?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good.
I'm going to snag one for me.
3 days later.
Also, you were talking about the candy and all that, and this is another one that's like not always in the packages, which sucks because it's like the thing that gives things flavor.
I gotta ask though, what's the thinking around the spoon?
The spoon?
Yeah, you could just squeeze everything out. So what's the point of a spoon?
A cultured man, I see. A lot of people just, they like cut out like a corner and then just like squeeze it in.
Right.
If you like heat them up and you're trying to do something fancy, because I've done it sometimes where I combine everything, like I break the crackers up and I mix it with everything else.
Okay.
And then you can just like shovel everything.
Top chef this.
Exactly. Yeah. But I know some people who like, if they just bring that on a mission.
Yeah.
Rather than bringing the entire MRE, it's like, we're going to go on a 8-hour mission. I might only need this. So they just bring this. And
got it. Okay.
Okay. So getting back into it, 2 years come up, some fun, some not so fun, some laughs, some cries.
Yeah.
You obviously find yourself in America. Is it through that program that you were mentioning of international school, or how do you get here?
So remember earlier we talked about how I was pretty lazy as a student. So this is sort of where my story diverged from what I thought it would be going into the Army and what it ended up being leaving.
Yeah.
So I theoretically didn't do well enough to get into a good university.
Okay.
And that sort of put a little bit of a Debbie Downer on the whole situation. Like, hey, what are you going to do out of the Army? Yeah. So first things first, discipline was really helpful. Mm-hmm. Like you had time to be like, hey, you got to do these things. You got to show up. You got to like tidy your bed. Very simple stuff that kind of like instilled the discipline that I think I needed at that point. And it also bought me some more time to figure out what I wanted to do next.
Yeah.
So what I actually did was in the second year, and a few of the other I guess, colleagues, teammates of mine also did the same thing, is that we started studying for the SATs.
Okay.
Right. So fortunately enough, I had a couple of weeks where I could sit down, dedicate my time, and then got a decent enough score that got me into several placements in universities in the United States, and then ended up choosing the one that I thought was the best value for the best price point that I get. So
do most people in Singapore go to college outside of Singapore? I guess, is there like a well-known or like a premier college in Singapore? Or is the classic thing to do is say like, let me find something more interesting?
Yeah, no, we have great universities, which is also the reason why I couldn't get into them.
Oh, really? Oh, wow. So we were the backup. I'm a little offended now, actually. All right.
But yeah, there are a lot of opportunities. So Australia, United Kingdom, America, you have plenty of good universities out there where, again, this is another thing, right? Where for me, I felt that my time in the military also gave me a perspective. Mm-hmm. I guess I didn't like being told what to do more than I thought I would. It's good to have discipline and structure, but I really like my freedom. Yeah. And there's no country that spoke to me other than the great
the most freedom in the world.
Exactly. And that definitely was sort of, you can't argue with what is coded in your fate. Mm-hmm. And for me, that felt like coming to the United States.
Did you have anyone in your life that had gone through that journey of coming to America or
coming to America?
coming to America? Or was it just something inherent that you're like, let me look into America? I guess I just want to know, like, what was the impetus, or what's the thing that's starting to move the cogs in your head to look at America as a place that you want to go?
I don't know, maybe MTV, maybe Hollywood movies, but just that whole soft power of like, hey, it's the place to be, right? If you want to be somebody, you got to be here. My mom always joked, like, she knew right off the bat that I was going to go somewhere far. Yeah. And
was she happy about that, or very sad?
Honestly, she is probably the best mom I could ask for. Yeah. I know it broke her heart when I wanted to go, but she constantly encouraged me and constantly pushed me. So yeah, that's the joke she always tells me, is like, I knew right away that you're always going to go somewhere far. You're always going to try to see the world, and I will not stop you. And I want you to do what you feel is the best for you.
Is she still in Singapore?
Yes.
Wow.
Most of my family is still in Singapore.
Okay. How often are you able to go visit?
So we're just back there over Christmas. So yeah, it's a 19-hour direct flight. I mean, it's not for the faint of heart, but family's there. Family's most important.
And I guess eventually when you tend to get used to it after a while. I mean, 19 is particularly brutal, but maybe not. No, but that's good. I still have family in Sweden, and not 19 hours, 12 maybe, like 9.
Once you get past 10, it's kind of like,
yeah. What I do is I don't watch movies. So then when I get on the plane, I just have like 3 to 4 movies that I can watch, and then I sleep, wake up, and I am hopefully in the country where I'm at. Nice. Doesn't always work when you travel a whole bunch and then you've seen all the movies that are on the in-flight entertainment. Right. This is like the most like first world problem in the world. They're gonna be like, why is he complaining about this? Listen, you've never been on a 19-hour flight and realized you've seen all the movies on the in-flight entertainment? That's struggle.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You have this desire. So you do get into a college here in the United States. Which one? And what was expectation versus reality coming to the United States?
Right. So I actually got a place at the University of Washington out in Seattle. Okay. Great school. I don't know if you've been to Seattle, but
once.
Okay. I can't recommend it in summer. I cannot recommend it anytime else. Yeah. So it's a terrible place if you like sunshine. But I loved it. I love the rain. I don't mind being wet and miserable. Yeah. Maybe that speaks to some of the
military, particularly preparing you for Seattle, of all places.
Nothing like being soaked for 5 straight days to reset expectations for what dry feels like. So, so I did that. So this was one of the things I wanted to bring up too, is the trade-offs, right? So national service, conscription is good. You want to build a national identity. It creates discipline. Now let's kind of talk about the practical side of it. I was 3 years behind my peers in the same year. Mm-hmm. And it created a sort of impetus for me to be, you got to graduate earlier.
Yeah.
So imagine everybody else going kind of freshman year, 18, 19, and you can start buying alcohol for them.
Yeah.
That like creates a different warped sense of like time and expectation here.
Yeah.
So
did you know what you want to study? Or, I mean, talking about that kind of gap, right? So you're like rushing to kind of graduate to maybe catch up on some of the lost time, quote unquote, right? But then like, how are you figuring that out?
Figuring out like
what you want to do, like the next steps. What are you going to do after you graduate? What are you even going to study? Like, did you go in knowing what you want to study and do, and you're just trying to graduate so you can get to that point? Because a lot of what I was doing after the Army was just like a lot of soul searching of like, what do I like? What makes me happy? Am I enjoying the work that I'm doing? Am I good at the job that I'm doing? And that took me, I mean, honestly, like 5 years from when I got out to when I graduated. You know, I had done 2 years of community college and 3 years of 4-year university. And during that whole time, I was still just like, I don't know what I want to do.
Really?
Yeah.
I think, by the way, this is really funny. I would only eat it this way, which is just to pinch out for a corner.
Yeah.
So I can roll it up as quickly. You're very thoughtful and delicate about it.
I'm going for the Tabasco in there because that was the first time I had a Tabasco that wasn't literally evaporated. It's got some kick to it. Well, feel free to use it if you want, but now we got two methods of
right.
But I guess the question is like, did you know what you wanted to do and you had a very clear path towards that, or was there kind of soul searching?
No, so one of the things that was not, I guess, talked about is the academic calendar starts January to December. Colleges start traditionally in the fall. Mm-hmm. So what happens is when I left the Army, I've actually missed the previous year. So I had like a 9 months gap to kind of fill it in.
Yeah.
So if you talk about soul searching, that was like 9 months of like working. I was working for the International Olympic Committee. I was working at all the different other jobs along the way. It kind of gave me a perspective, I guess, like what I wanted. To answer your question very specifically, did I know what I wanted to do? Maybe. So I didn't know really what I wanted to do per se, but I figured that the easiest, the most viable option, the one that gives me the most exit routes, was something in finance or in business. And that's the route that I chose.
It's very funny because when I got out, I was like, investment banking, like that's got to be the thing, right?
That's the same thing. Like, it's the same process. Consulting, banking, because that's the one that doesn't close as many doors. And you sort of bought yourself a bit more time and a bit more money to figure out what you really wanted to do.
I do think, as silly as it sounds, it does make sense. It's kind of, I see them as insurance policies, right? Like if you go into consulting, not that I'm saying that's like the safe route, but you can do a lot of things afterwards, right? So where you go into investment banking, go into consulting, you have that experience, you've kind of unlocked the door to be able to do other things in life, where if you go straight into startups, there's a lot more selling of those traits that you need to do, right? Because you go, oh, I worked at McKinsey. Everyone knows McKinsey for the most part. But if you're like, I worked at Pico Mart, you're like, what is a Pico Mart? Oh, it's a da-da-da, and I did this and I did that. And it just doesn't have the same ring.
Yeah, I think I had also a slightly different situation. Mm-hmm. So I was ready to graduate from the University of Washington, figure out a job back home in Singapore or somewhere in Asia. Yeah. I think about 4 months before I was supposed to graduate, I met a girl.
It's always the story, right?
And then, that's all she wrote. Yeah. And she just kind of stuck around here. So that also created a bit of, you got to work in banking, a larger organization, because of that visa.
Yeah.
Right? The ability to stay in the country legally, to earn a paycheck, to contribute to society. Those are opportunities. Those are funnels that are usually traditionally reserved for people that have legal status. Mm-hmm. And to acquire legal status, you tend to end up having to work for larger companies that can sponsor you.
So is that what you did?
Yeah.
Where did you end up working?
So I ended up working for a bank, and then for another bank, and then went to Amazon, then went to a startup, and now I'm just working on my own stuff now.
I would love to talk a little bit of those experience. So bank, then bank. If you're comfortable talking about which specific ones, like which ones were they, and I guess, did you have friends back in Singapore working in? Because I mean, Singapore is a fairly like high human capital.
Yeah.
Like metropolitan city where there is big, financial industry there as well. Were there differences there, or I mean, how was that experience working at some of those banks?
So I'm not going to talk about the banks per se, because I don't really think they like me to talk about them.
That's fine.
It's that type of culture. I will say I'm the exception and not the rule. Most people tend to have to go back because they have family, they have obligations. I fortunately have a very supportive family that's like, hey, you should go and make your mark in the world. So, but working in a bank, I think this is one of the key things where we talked about where the pathing of your life charts out. A bank is a bank, right? A bank in Dubai, a bank in London, a bank in New York, a bank in Singapore is exactly the same structure.
Yeah.
It's the same
shared language.
Exactly, right. It's the shared language concept we talked about in the military. To me, it was okay. It wasn't great.
Yeah.
Again, it built discipline. It built the structure of like, hey, put your hours in, know what to do, what's 1 + 1. But I think, like the military, it created a clear parallel of like, this is the discipline. This is probably what you need right out of college, but this is not where you want it to be.
Did you work in Singapore outside of the military? Because I'm curious as to whether or not maybe you got frustrated, or if there was any differences in the terms of mentality of working with people who have had that shared military experience versus a whole bunch of people who maybe didn't.
No, I don't. Actually, I don't think that ever came up in my consciousness. I never thought about it. So no, I can't say for sure.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I notice some veterans struggle when they get into the civilian workforce, and they're like, the people I'm working with don't have this experience, or they don't think in this way, etc. And again, maybe, I don't know if that's a difference between a 2-year contract versus a 4-year contract, or I don't know. There's probably a whole host of different reasons as to why that maybe is.
Yeah, I will say, Holden, that if I had worked with somebody, and I have worked with people that have been in the military, like very quickly we sort of resonate. There's like that vibration that you have.
Yeah.
They had a much more different experience, like have actual active deployment while we're blue skies. There's some frequency that I can't describe.
How hard was it to adjust, and I guess coming into that realization of like, maybe I'm only here for 2 years now, or 4 years now, I'm going to be here into perpetuity?
Not perpetuity, that's for sure. Like there are plans. Me and the missus have plans to move back to Singapore for a little bit.
Okay. Is she Singaporean or
born and raised American?
Okay.
Yeah.
But she wants to, or is interested, or is on board of
she loves it there. We treat her well there. I show her the good stuff. She loves it there.
The street food, the Singaporean crab.
She's more local than I am now. That's how I joke about it. But yeah, so not in perpetuity. Definitely have learned a lot being here. That I think that also is sort of the impetus that if we do go back in sort of the relatively near term future, what's that highest, I guess, the highest EV thing you can do?
Yeah. And
time again, the equation always pops up. Be like, you should try to do something here. This is, again, the only country that I will die on that hill that is the best place to start a company.
Yeah.
The best talent, the best capital, the best resourcing. And that definitely feels like what I should do before maybe I close this chapter of being in America.
What drove you to go the entrepreneurship route, especially kind of banking, right? Because like finance, right? You're working in fintech, but traditional banking, right? Or the roles that you're maybe doing in banking, very different than being a founder of a fintech startup. And I don't mean this in an offensive way, but I have seen a lot of people struggle to make that shift of being a banker who, or IB or what have you, right? And I think likewise in the military, where it's like this is when you're waking up, this is what you're going to wear, you're updating this Excel sheet, you're using this formula. And then where founders was like, I don't know, man, like you got to figure it out. And maybe there is, I do think, and I could make the argument that in the military, there is a lot of that, like you're on a mission, everything goes to shit.
Yeah.
Figure it out.
Yeah.
But did you always know you wanted to do entrepreneurship, or was there a shift when you were doing those other jobs?
No, definitely not. And for the record, I did feel like, again, the first couple of months when I started to do stuff, learning from you, learning from all the other founders, like, yeah, there's a complete understanding of like how much I didn't know. And that was sort of that food bar moment again that we talked about. Like you very quickly realize how much you don't know and how much you should be learning as quickly as you can. I think it comes into reps. The other thing we talked about is just not giving up. This is, again, one of the only countries that I'm very aware of that rewards failure in the sense of you don't give up and you keep going up to the plate, keep batting, keep showing up every day. This is the country that will reward you more so than any other country in the world.
I don't remember who said this. This may have been a comedian or what have you, but somebody had mentioned either British culture or German culture.
Tall poppy?
Or it's like, what's up?
Tall poppy.
Tall poppy?
Tall poppy syndrome.
Yeah, or like it's like, oh, I worked on a startup and it failed, and like the mentality would be like, well, but like, why did you think it was going to work in the first place?
Right. Yeah.
Like it's not like hey Matt, like in American culture, it's like, you know, the fact that you even did that, like hell yeah, man, like you tried, like that's incredible, right? But and again, I'm making broad strokes here with this statement here, but by and large, the mentality in Europe tends to be but like, why would you? Like,
it's the same in Asia, right? Yeah. Like you don't talk about, people talk about success with sort of like that. Yeah, you know, they got lucky.
Yeah.
And then when you fail, it's like, well, obviously it's going to fail, like, because you're doing it.
Yeah.
So there's a concept of, you know, it's always better to not stand out. We talked about like the tall poppy syndrome. It gets cut off. So people don't traditionally tend to like stick up. Do the thing that you're supposed to do, that's preordained, the lawyers, the doctors, the bankers, the consultants, because that's tried and true. But once again, the United States is one of those countries where there are points, there are actually accolades and really giving it an honest shot.
Yeah.
And nobody that I've seen that has given up could really amount to something really good in the United States for that reason. You just have to keep showing up, keep doing things every single day.
And so when did that shift happen into entrepreneurship, and how has that been going?
I think the shift happened more gradually for me. For most people, it's just you sort of fall into it. You either yes or you know. But for me, it came to like doing things I thought I should do, and then not liking them. And then you slowly start check the box like, okay, I did this, I didn't like it. I did this, I didn't like that. I also came, my family, they also did entrepreneurship. My dad did, my dad's dad did. There was potentially that sort of like yearning, that genetic yearning to like, hey, you should probably take a stab at it. Maybe do it way better than them, like give it an honest go. So for me, it felt more like a slow descent into entrepreneurship. And how it's going, just there are days where, and I'm sure you can relate, you just don't freaking feel like getting up.
Yeah.
And then there are days where everything just feels like it's chiming on 11. You're just dialing it in. Everything just seems to work. The key thing is always show up.
Yeah.
Just always show up. Every day, just show up. Do a little bit. You hate it, do a little bit. You love it, do a little bit more.
Yeah. And sometimes it's interday, like morning start out great, evening bad, night kind of good. 1 hour before bed, back to bed. I was thinking about this morning. It's been a really challenging couple of weeks, just like a lot of work, a lot of prep, all that. And I think one of the things driving me is I don't want anybody to ever say this failed because I didn't try hard enough. Like that's the one thing. It's like because I can excuse market forces. I can excuse sometimes product market fit or what have you. There's a lot of things that are outside of my control that I think I've come to be like, I'm angry about this. I'm upset about it, but I understand that there's nothing I can do to make it go faster. There's physically nothing I can do, but I always just kind of come back to, it's like, well, but excusing all of that, what can I do to even get an inch, right? And I don't want anybody to ever look at me or the company or what we're doing and be like, man, if only Holden tried a little bit harder. Because like, I don't know. Maybe this is like an internal thing, but I'm just like, I care way too much for that to be the excuse or for that to be the thing that's like, that's why it failed. Yeah.
No, more power to you there. That's definitely something that more people can, and even if they're not an entrepreneur, just like adopt as like a mentality. Yeah. Just put in everything you got. Like that's all you can do is just put in as much as effort as you can.
What does the future look like to you? I mean, you said not into perpetuity. So obviously there's maybe that goalpost in the future of moving back to Singapore. Is it creating a company in which you can then be remote and living in Singapore? Is it an idea that, you know, after a potential exit or doing this, that you would be able to shift into a different career? Right. Or how much have you thought about, you have point A and you have point B. Is it just, let's see where that journey takes us to get to point B, or these are the things I need to do to get there?
So I think about my journey in America as sort of a story arc. Foreign shores, coming in there, unknown lands, trying to figure out what's going on, sort of the Joseph Campbell, you know, the hero.
When does your book release? I'm sorry, I'm kidding.
But I do believe that the natural end will come in sort of the way that most people can understand and appreciate. What I mean by that is I would know when that time comes, and that arc will conclude when I feel like I've written every story I can.
Yeah.
Maybe this company that I'm working on is that last chapter for this story arc. I'm not sure, but I definitely feel like this is sort of one of the few, you know, call it like the epilogue chapters for my story arc here.
Can you talk a little bit about what you're working on, or is it still relatively under wraps?
So we are live but not public. You know a little bit about it. I can kind of go into kind of like the high level stuff, but you know, I'm sure you've probably been wondering and seeing news about how so many people have been complaining that they can't own a home, can really like afford their home. So what we're actually doing is we're helping homeowners save more money, and our first product is to help them save on their property taxes. We basically work through 150 million properties in the United States, use our AI technology and our technology stack to identify, say, for example, Holden, you're overpaying on your property taxes, and then help you automate the entire appeal flow. So getting you money back from the government.
That's incredibly exciting. How do you...
I see your gears turning here.
So. I know, because we always get to this point in the show,
right,
where I know we're running out of time, and there's so many threads that I want to pull on, and I'm mentally going like, but which ones do I want to pull on? Are you happy?
Yes, I do believe I'm happy. Yeah.
What influences that? Or like, is there a specific reason that this is a silly question, but like, why, I guess?
If your answer is, could I be happier? The answer is also yes. But your question was, am I happy? I think the easiest way to answer that is, would I rather be doing something else? And the answer is no. Then I think that I'm happy.
It's a lot of I contextualize my happiness a lot like that. There are days where I might, in aggregate, I'm happy. There are days where I'm not. But even on the days where I'm not happy, I tend to think, but what would be the alternative?
Right. Yeah.
And the answer is like, no, like it's this.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I can't say the same when I was doing equity research. I can't say the same when I was doing other things. And I mean, again, there's a lot of reasons why I left the military and all that, but there was days where I'd wake up and be like, I'm unhappy. do I want to do something else? Like, yeah, like 100%. I want to know, like, I want to do something else too. And I like asking that question because in the way that sometimes service members think back about their time in the military with rose tinted glasses, and I'm in that same boat as well, where I'm sometimes like, oh, but it was a simpler time and all these other things. It's like, yeah, but I do remember that I thought I could be doing something else. And where now, even the days where I might be stressed, I go, but this is the thing that I want to be doing.
I always believe that bad experiences make the best stories. Mm-hmm. You don't talk about, oh, we had a nice meal, everything went perfectly fine. A lot of times life experiences boils down to like when everything is stripped away, when the creature comfort, when everything is just down to like the last vestiges of effort, resources, and then somehow you miraculously pull it off.
Yep. That's
the story that gets codified in sort of what is the story of Holden and what's the story of everybody else, right? Yeah. So for me, like that's the whole concept of like tough times make tough men, and that's when all the good stories come to. So write the story that you want to, and I think a lot of times the best chapters, the best arcs, the best main character energy is when they're going through the toughest time. So embrace it.
You know what else makes a good story? Or you know what a good story makes? A good king.
So what makes a good king?
Ian, thank you so much for being on.
No, thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. Oh, score 1 out of 10.
1 out of 10. Let's do 8.7 because
8.7.
Very solid, very decent. I could see myself wolfing this down even if I'm not in the field.
There we go. We'll take it. Ian, thank you so much again.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Cheers.